Have you ever made a tiny, almost insignificant mistake and instantly felt like a complete and total failure? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You send off this super important email and boom, there's a glaring typo right in the first line. Or maybe you've been doing so great on a new diet and you cave, you eat just one piece of cake. Suddenly your brain completely flips a switch. You decide you are totally, irrevocably incompetent. The diet's ruined. You're a terrible professional. We have all been there. And let's be honest, it's an incredibly frustrating place to be. Well, let's dive right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on a genuinely fascinating and honestly super practical concept straight out of Thomas Alethia's book, 12 Steps to a Good Life. We're going to equip you with a very specific, incredibly effective mental tool to reframe those automatic negative thoughts. We want to help you escape the trap of all or nothing thinking. We call this the both and solution. And by the end of our time together, you'll know exactly how to use it in your daily life. Section 1, the perennial struggle, trapped in a cycle of negative self-talk. Section 2, the cognitive triangle, how our thoughts create our reality. To really get to the bottom of the perennial struggle, that universal lifelong conflict where we just get stuck in rigid expectations and beat ourselves up over minor setbacks, we need to look at a brilliant concept from cognitive behavioral therapy that the book focuses on. It's called the cognitive triangle. It's basically a simple 3-step loop. Step 1 is your thoughts, step 2 is your feelings, and step 3 is your actions. The absolutely crucial point to grasp here is how they link together. Your thoughts directly influence your feelings, which then turn around and dictate your actions and behaviors. So if you're having negative thoughts, they're going to breed negative emotions, and ultimately that leads to negative behaviors. But here's the beautiful part. If you can interrupt this cycle right at the top, at the thought level, you can actually change everything else that follows. Section 3. All or nothing thinking. Naming the culprit. But here is exactly where the cycle usually goes off the rails. Our brains have this tendency to rely on specific cognitive distortions, basically thinking errors. And the real enemy here is what we call all or nothing thinking, or black and white thinking. Essentially, this is a distortion where you see situations in extreme categories. There is absolutely zero middle ground. You either view yourself as a complete success or a total failure. If you don't get a perfectly flawless score, well, then you're a loser. If someone disagrees with you, they must hate your guts. It creates this suffocating, completely false reality that literally traps us in perfectionism. So how do we actually spot this happening in our own heads? Listen closely for these absolute terms: always, never, perfect, worthless, complete success, total failure. When your internal monologue starts relying heavily on these words, it is actively hurting you. Why? Because it completely erases all the nuance from your life. The reality is, almost all of life happens in the shades of gray. But when we use these extreme words, we basically put blinders on, and we can't even see our own progress. Before we jump into the exact tool to fix this, I really want you to think about this incredible quote from the science fiction author Philip K. Dick. Alethea uses it in the book to ground us. He says, "Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away." The main takeaway here is that your extreme, rigid, all-or-nothing thoughts, they aren't actually real. They're just a highly distorted map of reality. Yes, sure, the mistake you made is real, but the thought that you were somehow worthless because of that mistake, that's just a belief. And the moment you stop believing it, it completely vanishes. Section 4. The both and solution. The mental pivot to freedom. Okay, so how do we build our way out of this trap? We need a mental tool, like a magic sword to slay this cognitive dragon, right? And that tool is the active adoption of both and language. We literally have to purposefully train our brains to accept paradoxes. Alethea connects this to a really wonderful Zen concept called mu. To put it simply, mu means the answer is larger than the question. Our brains love to frame things as a strict yes or no, like, am I a success, yes or no? But that doesn't mean a simple yes or no is actually truthful. The truth is rarely a simple binary. It's almost always much larger and a whole lot more flexible than that. Let's actually look at how this plays out in practice. Notice the huge contrast here. On the left side, we have that suffocating absolute, I messed up today, I am a failure. That is just a mental dead end. But on the right side, we use the turnaround. We inject that both and language. I fell short today, and I will do better tomorrow. Just feel how liberating that reality is. You weren't pretending the mistake didn't happen, but you were absolutely refusing to let it define your entire identity. Here's another really great example to drive this home. On the left, I made a mistake. Period. End of story. But on the right, I made a mistake, and I am still on the right track. By just swapping out a harsh stopping period with the word and, we add so much vital nuance. We are actively training the brain to accept that two conflicting things can be entirely true at the exact same time. You can absolutely accept a setback without having to view yourself as a total, irredeemable failure. It's a game changer. Section 5. Thinking for life. Applying the both and language daily. So, the big question is, how do we make this an actual habit? Aletheia calls this practice thinking for life. It's all about intentionally integrating this cognitive shift into your day-to-day routine, so you aren't just blindly reacting to whatever life throws at you, but you're actually navigating it. This brings us to the ABC model, another incredibly useful tool highlighted in the book. A stands for the activating event. That's just the thing that happens, like making a typo. B is your belief. This is where your mind instantly forms a rigid interpretation, like, wow, I'm so stupid. And C is the consequence. It's how you end up feeling and acting. Maybe you feel deeply ashamed and just completely stop working for the day. To apply our new both and language, we have to interrupt this automatic cycle right smack in the middle, at that B stage. We've got to catch the rigid belief before it turns into a negative consequence. Now, there's a really crucial distinction here that we need to pull from the text. Thought stopping is not the same thing as thought suppression. Thought suppression is when you try to hide from a thought, forcefully telling yourself, don't think about it, don't think about it. Honestly, that's super unhealthy and almost always backfires. Thought stopping, on the other hand, is exactly what we want to do. We want to actively accept that the thought is happening, recognize that it's completely unhelpful, intentionally interrupt it, and then replace it with our nuanced both and language. The tricky thing is, when you're stuck in that ABC cycle, those thoughts hit you incredibly fast. To help you actually pause and interrupt them, Aletheia shares this fantastic, super memorable rule of thumb. When you feel bad, put your thoughts on the pad. Literally, write them down. Don't try to just think your way out of a thinking problem. Grab a physical notebook or just open the Notes app on your phone. Describing your extreme thoughts clearly and honestly on a piece of paper creates real physical distance between you and the thought itself. And once it's staring back at you on the pad, it is so much easier to step in and inject that both and nuance. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to carry with you. Where will you find the nuance in your next difficult moment? Because the very next time you face the perennial struggle, the next time you make a tiny slip up and your brain starts screaming total failure, I want you to remember the tools we talked about today. Grab your pad, interrupt that absolute belief, and forcefully insert a giant and right into the middle of the sentence. You are a work in progress, and you are doing just fine. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.